The mission on Kareth 9 was supposed to be routine, at least by human standards. A cold, barren moon orbiting a red dwarf star, it served as a hidden outpost for illegal bioweapon research and smuggling. A joint strike force of human marines and Zilari operatives was sent to dismantle the facility, capture key data, and, if necessary, destroy the site. The Zilari, an elegant, highly advanced species known for their precision in science and medicine, had never operated alongside humans in a combat environment before. This mission would be their first, and it would mark a turning point in their understanding of Deathworlder biology. Corporal Jace Morin led a fire team during the breach operation. As the squad moved through a corridor lined with unstable chemical, storage tanks and enemy-triggered explosive detonated. The blast was sudden and violent. Shrapnel tore through the air. Without hesitation, Jace threw himself in front of an exposed Zilari observer, taking the brunt of the explosion. A jagged shard of metal embedded itself deep into his torso, narrowly, missing his lung. He collapsed, gasping, blood pouring from the wound. Human medics rushed in but were quickly overwhelmed. Their medical supplies were either destroyed in the blast or inaccessible. The Zilari, initially hesitant, stepped in and ordered a medevac. Though they had extensive training in xenomedicine, none of them had ever treated a human injury in real time. Still, their ethics left them no choice. They would attempt to save him. Corporal Morin was taken aboard the Zilari hospital ship Sanctum of Renewal, a floating marvel of biotechnological engineering. Inside its pristine operating theater, a team of 6 Zilari surgeons prepped for immediate surgery. The lead surgeon, Chief Medical Artisan Cathalic, was renowned for his calm precision. He expected challenges. Human physiology was resilient, but notoriously chaotic by galactic standards. Still, he had confidence in Zilari surgical protocols. What he did not expect was to encounter something that defied every rule of known biology. The procedure began with a standard molecular incision, an ultra-fine scalpel meant to cut cleanly without trauma. But the moment the blade touched Jace's skin and opened the wound, something bizarre happened. The blood clotted. Instantly. There was no pooling, no time for absorbent gels or plasma suction. Instead, the blood thickened and sealed the wound almost before it fully opened. It was as if the body itself was resisting the operation, fighting the intrusion at a speed that bypassed conscious control or chemical delay. The medical equipment registered a spike in clotting agents, but they were acting with unnatural velocity, faster than the instruments could measure. The room fell silent. Assistant surgeons exchanged uncertain glances. The AI monitoring system stuttered, then flagged the event as a physiological anomaly, unregistered biological response. Catholic called for a full-body scan. The data came back unreadable by Zilari standards. Adaptive clotting responses, microfibrin networks restructuring in real time, and a complete absence of tissue trauma despite the surgical cut. One assistant theorized that the human's bloodstream was somehow laced with programmable nanobots, an illegal enhancement, but detailed analysis found no such agents. Everything inside Jace was natural. It was his baseline. Cathalic stepped back, stunned. "We cannot operate," he said finally. "His body heals faster than we can cut. If we continue, we may cause greater harm than the injury itself." The surgeons, among the best in the galaxy, could do nothing but watch as the human's body mended itself. Not perfectly, but fast. Faster than their most advanced medical interventions could assist. In that quiet, sterile room, the Zilari encountered a truth they weren't ready for. Deathworlders didn't survive because of luck or technology. They survived because their bodies were built to refuse death itself. The operating room aboard the Sanctum of Renewal remained deathly silent. Chief Medical Artisan Cathalic stood frozen, his 4 delicate hands suspended mid-air, surgical instruments, still humming softly in the sterile light. Around him, the rest of the Zilari medical team exchanged uncertain glances, their facial frills darkening in alarm, a clear sign of cognitive distress. The screens above the operating table scrolled diagnostic data, but none of it made sense. The human, Corporal Jace Morin, was still unconscious, but his vitals were not only stabilizing, they were improving. His body was healing itself, not gradually, not with external assistance, but rapidly and aggressively, at a pace that ignored known biological laws. "What we are witnessing is not regeneration," muttered one junior medic. "It's defense. His blood is treating us as a threat." That realization struck the room like a silent explosion. The medical AI, trained on thousands of species and decades of Confederation medicine, struggled to interpret the data. It presented one flagged line over and over: bioreactive clotting, unknown mechanism, non-mechanical response. The clotting agents in Jace's blood weren't just plugging wounds, they were responding to damage as if they had intelligence. Each incision was met with a flurry of activity. Microfibrils formed into sealing lattices faster than surgical tools could penetrate tissue. Pain signals, though suppressed by anesthesia, were triggering internal cascades that restructured surrounding cells to brace for trauma. To the Zalari, this was unnatural, unsettling. In their culture, medicine was a delicate, harmonious science: precision treatments, bioharmonics, and tissue-guided nanotherapy. The human body, by comparison, looked brutish, violent, but now it was outpacing even their most advanced tools. "I advise quarantine," one of the assistants said, nervously checking their gloves. "What if this response spreads outside? The wound? What if it's contagious?" "It's not a virus," Kethelek snapped. "It's his own physiology, unaugmented." Still the fear lingered. The idea that a species could walk around with such aggressive biological autonomy was unsettling. The Zalari prided themselves on control: medical control, emotional control, cultural control. And here was a human, unconscious and barely alive, yet still dictating the terms of his own survival. One assistant ran a deep tissue scan to check for immune rejection. What they found made things worse. Macrophages in Jace's body weren't just cleaning foreign cells, they were learning from them, analyzing them, adjusting future responses. In real time, Kethelek stepped away from the table. "We will not proceed with surgery," he announced. To do so would be futile and potentially dangerous. "But his internal bleeding," another surgeon protested. "Is already stopping," Kethelek interrupted. "His body is doing the work faster than we can. We will monitor. Nothing more." Surgeons removed their gloves and powered down the tools. The operating room lights dimmed slightly, and the soft hum of the medical system slowed. In that moment, the Sanctum of Renewal, one of the most advanced medical ships in the Confederation, was rendered powerless in the face of a human body, doing what nature had designed it to do: survive. The incident shook the team. Conversations in hushed voices broke out. Some speculated about Deathworld evolution and how humanity's Earth environment, gravity fluxes, atmospheric chaos, microbial overload, had shaped physiology that viewed injury as a battlefield rather than a problem to be solved gently. It wasn't just resilience, it was biological aggression. One assistant whispered, "What else can they survive?" Kethelek didn't answer. He simply stared at the human and thought, not for the first time in his long medical career, that maybe the galaxy had underestimated what it meant to be from a death world. And perhaps worse, that humanity hadn't even revealed the full extent of what they were capable of yet. The events in the operating theater spread through the Sanctum of Renewal like a shockwave. What began as a surgical anomaly quickly became the subject of urgent inquiries, private transmissions, and whispered speculation across Zalari medical circles. Corporal Jace Morin, a single injured human soldier, had unintentionally ignited a crisis of understanding in one of the galaxy's most scientifically advanced civilizations. The surgical team's official report was cautious, deliberately stripped of anything that might cause alarm. Yet despite efforts to downplay the event, word of the instant clotting human reached the Zalari medical conclave within hours. The internal networks buzzed. A closed meeting of high-level medical scholars was convened immediately. The discussion turned heated. Some believed they had witnessed a medical miracle, while others feared they had seen the first signs of a biological weapon in disguise. "Adaptive coagulation at that speed is not natural," insisted Scholar Tavath. a senior advisor to the Confederation's Biodefense Committee. If it isn't nanotech, then it's something worse, a native evolved equivalent. And if the humans have this as standard, what else are they hiding? But many disagreed. Dr. Nakar, a xenobiologist stationed aboard the Sanctum, pushed back against the fear-driven narrative. This isn't proof of weaponization, she argued. It's evidence of evolution under extreme conditions. Earth is a Class 12 death world, one of the most hazardous biomes in the known galaxy. Their biology adapted accordingly. Still, fear simmered beneath the surface. To the Zellari and much of the Confederation, humanity had always been something of a curiosity, physically strong, unusually adaptive, emotionally volatile. Impressive, yes, but crude, primitive. The prevailing thought was that humans survived despite their biology. But now that assumption had been shattered. What if humans survived because of it? On the Sanctum, Dr. Nakar was granted limited access to Jace's blood samples for research under strict observation. What she found astounded her. The clotting wasn't just fast, it was dynamic. The platelets weren't acting alone. Specialized proteins, previously unknown in the Confederation's genomic archives, were actively binding to injured tissue and reinforcing cellular structures on the fly. Moreover, the fibrin mesh formed during clotting was behaving like a smart gel, altering density based on tissue pressure and oxygen levels. No external command, no nanites, just pure, evolved human biology. It was elegant, brutal, and effective. She compiled her findings into a confidential report titled Auto-Adaptive Hemostasis in Homo sapiens, an Evolutionary Defense System. But even she knew it wouldn't remain confidential for long. The military, the Confederation Council, the scientific guilds, everyone would want to know more. Meanwhile, Jace Morin began to recover. Despite his injuries, he regained consciousness 2 days later. He blinked against the bioluminescent lights of the recovery chamber and looked around at the tense, silent medical staff surrounding him. "Is it over?" he asked groggily. Cathelek, who had been monitoring his vitals, nodded stiffly. "Yes, you survived." Jace gave a lopsided grin. "Told you I was hard to kill." The statement, meant as a joke, landed differently now. Cathelek didn't laugh. Neither did the other Zellari in the room. What once might have been considered bravado now sounded like a statement of fact, a grim one. Elsewhere, military strategists began taking interest. If human soldiers could survive trauma that killed others instantly, if their biology recovered faster than medical tech could treat, then what place did they have in the current galactic balance of power? Curiosity and fear coiled tightly around each other, threading through every conversation. For the first time in the modern age, the Zellari, and perhaps the wider Confederation, realized that humans weren't just unpredictable, they were biologically dangerous. The deeper the Zellari researchers delved into human physiology, the more disturbed and fascinated they became. What began as a post-operative anomaly in a single soldier quickly spiraled into a full-scale biological investigation. Under pressure from both scientific institutions and military oversight, the Zellari Medical Conclave authorized a formal xenogenomic study of human blood, tissue, and cellular behavior, using samples collected from Corporal Jace Morin under informed consent. What they uncovered would redefine the Confederation's understanding of biology. The most shocking discovery was the concept of trauma-primed adaptation. Human cells didn't merely repair, they learned. Every injury created a kind of biological memory. Fibroblasts responded faster with each new cut. Platelets began behaving like programmable agents, changing response rates based on the type of injury sustained. In essence, the body became faster, stronger, and more efficient at healing with every new wound, within hours. This flew in the face of established Confederation medical science. Most species used long-form regeneration cycles, requiring rest, nanite intervention, or external protein infusions. But humans, they accelerated under pressure. Their healing wasn't just biological, it was almost tactical. Even more confounding was the discovery of a class of proteins in human blood nicknamed reactive phase modulators, RPMs. These proteins appeared dormant in healthy tissue, but activated during trauma, reconfiguring blood viscosity and even tissue elasticity to minimize bleeding and cellular rupture. Nothing like it existed in the Confederation's database. Not even Death World predators from Class 11 planets had evolved such mechanisms. What we're seeing here, said Dr. Nakar during a closed research debrief, is not just survival evolution. This is biology optimized for battlefield endurance. These are not passive systems. Human bodies are preparing for violence at the cellular level. At this revelation, a quiet unease spread through the room. It was no longer just a matter of medical curiosity. If this adaptive system was standard in humans, and not the result of mutation or augmentation, then the implications were staggering. A human wounded in combat might return stronger within hours. A veteran with hundreds of healed injuries might possess a body conditioned to recover from mortal damage in minutes. More disturbingly, if such traits could be transferred through biotech, hybrid grafting, or black market gene editing, it could destabilize galactic norms. Already whispers spread through the black zones of the Confederation's darker sectors. Mercenary groups and fringe biolabs began hunting for data, for samples, for humans themselves. To the scientific elite, the revelation sparked awe. To politicians and generals, it ignited fear. The Confederation Defense Council convened an emergency session to discuss the findings. Some members argued for increased scientific cooperation with Earth. Others proposed containment measures, insisting human biology represented a potential threat on par with uncontrolled artificial intelligence. If this kind of healing becomes widespread, warned Admiral Kelthar, a Silene tactician, conventional warfare will become meaningless. You could shoot a human in the chest, and by the time you reload, he's back on his feet. Earth, for its part, remained largely unaware of the storm brewing. Humanity had long known they were tough, but they had no idea the galaxy considered their physiology unnatural. Meanwhile, back aboard the Sanctum of Renewal, Corporal Jace Morin was recovering at an astonishing rate. Scar tissue faded daily. His vital signs were not just stable, they were outperforming baseline norms. The only thing keeping him on bed rest was the insistence of the Zilleri staff, who treated him less like a patient now and more like a phenomenon. 1. Young Zilleri researcher, staring at the latest blood work, muttered the question that had begun echoing across the stars. If this is what humans do when they're wounded, what happens when they're truly at war? The biological revelation was clear. Humanity didn't need enhancements to be dangerous, they already were.